Trojan fans. Oops, that was a little rough one. Hey, everybody. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined alongside my co-worker, my co-host, Connor Morrissette, Mr. Triple Double himself. Sorry, the botched intro there. Just came from lunch with my mom. Picked her up at the airport. We went to lunch. How you doing, Connor?
Doing well. Those intros always make me laugh, so I kind of like the botched ones, actually.
The botched ones are kind of fun. Yeah, that was yeah, that was good. But hey, we got a great show for you today. Thanks for joining us a little bit later. Like I said, I picked my mom up at the airport. She's going to go to the homecoming Nebraska game. My uncle's coming in from Temecula, and my mom came in from the East Coast, so we're going to bring them to the game. Should be fun. I'm going to bring them to the House of Victory tailgate, so that should be a lot of fun. You might be kicked out, Connor, because I got to bring my mom.
Oh,
so
kick out RJ.
We could kick out RJ too, yeah. But yeah, so we got a great show for you. A lot of stuff we got to get to. Some sad news, some breaking news, stuff that's been going on around the program, and of course USC trying to get out of that horrible, not losing streak, but 4 out of the last 5 games, and need to make a bowl game. You got to try to take down a Nebraska squad that's reeling themselves. So we're going to get to all that. If you have questions or comments for the show, podcast at uscfootball.com is our email address, or you could call or text us at 424-254-9141. We got a couple of voicemails to play for you. And if you have the Apple Podcasting app or Spotify, you can leave us a 5-star rating for the Peristyle Podcast, which we appreciate very much. And you can also leave us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcasting app. So I let people know, hey, if you leave us a 5-star review, we can go through and read it, and we can do a giveaway for Trader Joe's gift cards too. So we did get a new one from Punt Pass Pundit, 16 years strong, the Trojan fix we all need. He says, I've been listening to the Peristyle Podcast for 16 years, minus a few Clay era breaks. We all needed those. Recently, I got hooked on the 2-Star Podcast. It's packed with interesting, hilarious insights that would be too much for any filthy casual. Speaking of the 2-Star Podcast, help a fellow cilantro boy out with a Trader Joe's card so I can cook just like my fellow cilantro boys, Chris and Gerard, do on 2-Star. Fight on. Well, you're going to win one. Yeah, Punt Pass Pundit. Send me an email, ryan@uscfootball.com, and we will get you a Trader Joe's gift cards. That's a cool review.
That was awesome. Shout out to Chris and Gerard. They're going to have their work cut out for them here because that signing period is coming really quickly here, and USC has some work to do to get all those guys who they have committed officially into that class with those signatures. I think it's December 4th is when you can start to sign guys. There's a lot to happen with the quarterback stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into on this show, but we'll see. They have the number 10 class right now. Can they hold on to a top 10 class? That would be great. A lot to play out, though, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. A lot of comments in the chat. We got to beat Nebraska. How could you lose in the new uniforms? We're going to get to those in a second there. But before we do want to thank our sponsor, Trader Joe's. I'm going over to Trader Joe's with my mom because I like to do a little shopping with her. I think we'll take her out for some meals, but I would like to make some stuff at home too. I love to do the charcuterie boards. As you know, they have a lot of cool stuff over at Trader Joe's for that. Brie is probably my favorite. Are you a soft cheese guy? Did I ask you this before? Not as big.
I do like cheese, but I'm not a big brie person.
Oh, I love brie. I don't know what it is. It's good. And the fig spread, you got to get that. So it's good. And they have some awesome prosciutto that you can, the thinner, like Italian meats, and get the different crackers. I got the garlic naan crackers for the first time, and I like those if you like the garlicky kind of flavor, but I'll put some of the prosciutto and then a piece of brie and then do the fig on top. You can impress, Connor, your girlfriend. If you want to impress her, you make a little charcuterie board for her. But you get little meats, little cheeses. The spread helps. That adds some. And then if you want a little color, you can go pick up some grapes or whatever you want and make a nice little charcuterie board. Get a nice bottle of wine. There's a lot of different options and stuff there over at Trader Joe's. So I'm going to do that with my mom. We might go and do a little picnic somewhere, something like that. But I want to thank Trader Joe's. They provided a bunch of gift cards for us to give away. John and Bray is awesome at that, but I love doing those kind of things. So yeah, I think the secret girlfriend, Connor, would appreciate that. If you
yes,
did that for her.
Yes, like Chris, the very real girlfriend. Trader Joe's is awesome. I remember,
unlike Chris, the very real girlfriend.
We made a chicken dinner a while back, and Chloe, my girlfriend, she thought it was funny that I said we made it, she made it. I was just along for the ride. But shout out to Trader Joe's. They got all the ingredients from there.
That's good. I'm glad. So she's a team player,
Yes.
She's like, hey, let's go to Trader Joe's. We're going to do all this stuff. Okay, so we have some. Maybe we'll start off with the unfortunate, sad news. A couple of great Trojans passed away this past week. John Robinson being the main one that everyone knows. Winning a national championship at USC, coming back for the second stint, and winning a Rose Bowl with Keyshawn Johnson and coaching the Rams, and just was just such a mighty figure around. I did a radio interview with an Omaha station this week, and that was the first thing they asked about, because they love college football, and he was a big part of that. And I think one of the things that I remember, Connor, was like doing the Art Bartner Bartcast, like we call it the Artcast is what we call it. So that the USC marching band, when he was retiring for 50 years, they asked me to do like a series of podcasts with him. We did videos kind of like this, and it was a lot of fun. And he so many good stories of different things. But one of the coaches that he just loved was John Robinson, and John Robinson loved the Trojan marching band. And there was, I forget what the big win was, but they played this clip on the Omaha radio station that I was doing, and he was like getting his accolades, but he was like, all right, I need to get off here. I want to hear the band. And like, that was his, his words. And he was just a great Trojan, and someone that, the second stint wasn't as good, obviously, but, being able to win a Rose Bowl and having Keyshawn and all that, I think he won the Cotton Bowl too. It was great. He was the first, he was the coach when I started USCfootball.com back in 96, so it was kind of crazy. But yeah, 89 years old. And so we just want to let everyone know, little, fight on in heaven to John Robinson.
What was it like when you first started the site, having him as the head coach? What was the media access like? What was your relationship with him like? I'm curious.
This is pre-media access. Okay. So the site was basically, it was like a fan site. It was a fan site like that. Yeah. It wasn't until sort of Pete Carroll, Paul Hackett did not like the internet, especially because people talked bad about him on the internet because he wasn't very good at what he did. So yeah, that was one of those things. But yeah, so there wasn't really a lot of media access back then. But people by then, they weren't really enamored with the way it was going. And then, he gets, if you remember, unfortunately, he was fired by Mike Garrett over his answering machine. As the story was kind of crazy. But that was just sort of like par for the course for USC for years to come. That's no indication of him, but was a great Trojan. He would come out to, even like when Pete Carroll was around, they would do these like Monday morning quarterback luncheons on campus and he would speak at those. I think I've spoke at a different event that he was at, and there was different things, but yeah, he was, great Trojan. So we just wanted to like pay our condolences, for, it's a tough one to see, him passing away. I guess, Jerry Fouts, who was the Notre Dame coach passed away too?
I forget the name, but I saw
was
that.
It Jerry Fouts?
Or it was the same day, right?
Yeah, it was like the same day. It's kind of crazy.
And there was a controversial play where USC won the game, but it looked like there was a fumble. Of course, there was no review. So I saw some people were talking about how, two real titans of college football passing away on the same day. It's almost like it was, in the stars up there, meant to be. That was a great USC Notre Dame game. And we were talking off the air, Ryan, with John Robinson. So the national championship that he won at USC, this is how funny college football is. That year, USC beat Alabama at Alabama.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year in the AP poll, Alabama was 1 and USC was 2. They both lost one game on the year. And in one of the polls, USC was the national champion. So they were able to claim a national championship. But just looking back from that time, like how the heck if a team plays head-to-head and one wins, especially on the road, and then you have that team over the team that beat them in the final poll. I don't miss the days of obviously I wasn't around then, but like it's nice that they can settle these things on the field now.
Yeah. We also have some breaking news.
We have some not so good.
Yeah, not good, but
breaking. This is why I'm typing away over here.
Yeah.
So
oh yeah, go ahead.
So Chris and I, we went out of our way to go to Oaks Christian on Friday to cover their game because we wanted to speak with Hayden Lowe, the top 50 defensive end who had been committed to USC. Chris interviewed him. He said, I'm firmly committed to USC. This is happening. And then on Monday, I get a text that said, oh, maybe not. And the source told me Miami was lurking. And then within like these past 10 minutes, there's been a huge social media push predicting that he would flip to Miami. And he just has, in fact, flipped to Miami. Hayden Lowe, a local prospect, defensive end, top 50 kid, the guy who USC just desperately needs. And just, I mean, I was down on the team to begin the year, but like how many of these hits can you take, Ryan, where like this is a player that would really help them and he flips to Miami? Like you got to get some recruiting wins here.
Yeah.
Nothing good is happening with the quarterback right now. This is your top ranked defensive player according to 247, and he flips to Miami. Like I know there is money there at USC. Like they gotta get some wins here. They're gonna really start to lose people even more than they already have. Like, oh my goodness, the bad headlines, the bad PR, it's just stacking up and up and up, and this is just another blow.
Yeah, and people are talking that, like Mark said, I just read Chris this morning that he was committed to USC. Yeah, like Connor just said, they literally saw him this weekend and interviewed him, and that's exactly what he said, and that's not exactly what happened.
No,
so.
and that like that's why the recruiting landscape frustrates me so much. Like you can have a one-on-one conversation with someone and they can tell you this is my plan, and I'm not accusing the kid of like doing anything wrong. Like this is just how it goes. And then a few days go by and maybe there's a financial offer, or I don't know exactly what happened, so I'm not trying to speculate too much, but I imagine that Miami gave him a pretty good offer and then boom, it changes, which is going back to my whole thing. Like I know these negotiations are probably never going to be public, but it would be nice if we could get some public contracts on the books. Like here is the market value for a player who's top 50 defensive end. Like this is what they're owed. And then it's either like, okay, USC is either going to pay that price or they're not. And I don't know if this was a bidding war, but it's interesting that on Friday we heard one thing and then here we are on Wednesday and this player has flipped to Miami. Like, with how stuff's going right now at USC, you'd think maybe they'd go out of their way to try to lock this kid down. So clearly something didn't happen. And I heard a rumor that maybe the coaching staff like didn't really do the best that they could to lock this kid down. How many rumors or how many times have we heard that before?
Yeah.
So,
Mark says that in the chat. He's like, yeah, the common theme in recruiting keeps saying they don't feel like USC is all in. And I just want to address something because there's some people talking about the collectives and everything. And we've reported this a lot. Okay. So USC was bad at the NIL game to start. Mike Bowen, as an athletic director, was not all in on it. The institution wasn't all in on it. They are now. Like, they are behind paying players. They are raising money at a crazy rate. They have a lot of money to give to recruits. So it's not Oregon money, but they money shouldn't be an issue, but it's more than just dollars. Like you're saying, you have to be like, we see Dan Lanning. Yes, they have bags to drop, but he's also all in on recruiting these guys. And I don't think USC is the same. And it's not just like there's money available. You have to negotiate it the right way. You could get outbid by someone and you even have a bigger offer than them, but they've done other things to commit a kid. So we don't know all the details behind this. But it's not this well-oiled machine that some of the other schools are. But you can't just throw the blame. It's like people were saying it's all on Miller Moss. We'll see on Saturday. But this isn't, they don't have money. They have money now, but it's more than just you have a bank account. Like there's a bank account there. How well are you utilizing that? How well are you conveying your message to these prospects? How hard are you recruiting them? I think all of that comes into play. So please don't just, the easiest thing is say they don't have the money. Like they have money. Like they definitely have money now. They probably don't have they're probably not utilizing it as best as they can. I don't know all the details behind this one, but I just caution people when they're just saying like the collective sucks, they don't have money. They've raised a ton of money. That shouldn't be the number one issue here.
This just happened in real time, so I'm with you. It could be that Miami came in and offered more. We don't really know right now, but just something consistently that I've heard is like USC as a staff doesn't recruit as hard as some of these other staffs do. Like when Samu Muwala flipped or just committed to Texas A&M, didn't even flip. Like USC wanted him. Lincoln Riley said in February, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that you come to USC. And then in October, he commits to Texas A&M, and I hear from a source who's directly involved in that recruitment, oh, A&M just did more. And
it wasn't about money.
No.
It was about actions.
It was in relationships, and that is still a big part of this. So what is frustrating if you're a USC fan is it finally looks like with the NIL stuff, like they're getting in the game, the money's there, they're flexing their muscle with that, but then you have this other issue where the level of recruiting these guys, the relationships, they just aren't as good as some of these other places. And Miami's been on him for a really long time. It's surprising because he did say Friday that he was locked in with USC, not going to take any more visits, but like nothing should be surprising in this world of recruiting. You have to be buttoned up financially, and then you have to be buttoned up with the groundwork and the relationships with these guys and the parents, and you got to be going out of your way to court the parents. A rumor I heard was with Lowe was maybe the USC staff didn't do enough with the parents. So that's something that if you're a fan, you have to be frustrated about, just because it's like games. You either sign the kid, you either win the game, or you lose the kid, or you lose the game. Like it's all about wins and losses. No one cares about everything in between. You either get it done or you don't. And USC consistently does not get these things done. It's frustrating.
Yeah. Mark says, I'm sorry, I pulled the wrong one up here. I'm trying to put up your comments. A lot of comments were coming in. I'm like, oh, the breaking news is happening. Connor, this is exactly what the story is saying. Hayden Felt said Miami treated him as number one and USC didn't until others decommitted. So there's definitely issues there. And I see Joe in the chat as like, the collective's terrible and all that stuff. I'm not going to say the collective's perfect, but we've put this stuff in the war room. There's a budget for what you need to raise to try to keep your roster that comes from the football side. And for what we were told, they got it. Like they have the money that they would need to build this roster. So there's certainly not, there's imperfections for sure. There's things going on, but it's not just like they don't have any money. Like they actually have money now, but you got to use that money. I can give Connor $1 million and he could go to Vegas in a weekend and blow it, or he could like invest it and have an amazing house, like whatever. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do with having the money. And before USC didn't have the money, now they do. Now you got to figure out how to use it correctly.
So here's a damning quote from our competitor, Chad Simmons. Shout out to him for getting Hayden Lowe on the record. He said, I feel like Miami has given me unwavering love since the start of my recruiting process. Since the start, USC really hasn't given me all in. I haven't really been their number one guy from the start. I became their number one guy when other recruits decommitted. With Miami, I've been their number one guy since the start. They love me. You've got to go where you're wanted. I feel like I'm more wanted in Miami than Los Angeles. There you have it.
That's a tough one. So, yes, there were people that were calling for fire the collective. I don't think this is on the collective.
No.
This is.
How about the guy who just got sanctioned by the NCAA for.
Which we got to get to, too. We haven't even got to that.
For having too many analysts. I mean, like, I've been backing Riley this whole time, but, like, how many of these hits can you take?
This is a tough one, yeah. But anyway, there was more stuff we were going to talk about, the breaking news there. But I did want to give a quick shout out. Nogales was a longtime, Lou Bracker was a longtime Peristyle member, poster. He was known as one of those sunshine pumpers, very positive outlook. He was 96 years old and passed away. His last post, I think, was in July. I bumped it. And he kind of gave his assessment for the season, thought the defense would be better. He thought 9-3 was sort of the floor. So, a little off on that, but we always loved his optimism. I mean, I don't remember a time being on the site, and I started this in 96, that he wasn't around. I mean, literally from the very beginning. And it's one of those things, Connor, when we're doing on the message board stuff on the Peristyle, and if you're not a member, I mean, that's all the love that poured out from him. Those threads have been great. You should go check it out. This is where the diehard USC fans are. If you are, there's no reason not to do it. You should go in there. And we actually I'll have a code for you guys too. If you guys want to sign up, you can do half off just for our Peristyle podcast and Tunnel Vision people. Peristyle 50 is the promo code. So when you check out, it's a coupon code. You get half off of your membership. So go check it out. But the outpouring of love for him was amazing. And like I said, I can't remember a time when he wasn't a part of the site. And we don't realize sometimes there's like names on the screens, and we see it even in the chats and stuff too. There's lives behind every one of them. And sometimes they're trolls. Sometimes they're just whatever. Like they're literally probably someone in their mom's basement. But This was a dude that literally was best friends with James freaking Dean in the 1950s and wrote a book about it. That kind of stuff, you're just like, what? Like, yes, there's a lot of really interesting people that just from all different walks of life that have a common bond, and it's USC football. And we've been lucky enough with the Peristyle over decades to be able to kind of bring these people together. So that was a sad one for me, someone that had posted a lot. We've definitely lost members over the years, and just a lot of the memories come up. You kind of look at your DMs with that person and emails exchanged, and he was an older guy, so there would be like trying to log in stuff or whatever, but great. He was always very positive on there, and people look forward to his posts. So we just wanted to just a little tribute to Nogales there.
If you consider yourself a hardcore fan, then you have to be a Peristyle subscriber. That's where I go. I cover the team for my job, and sometimes I get little tidbits that even I wasn't aware of on that message board. But to your point about connecting with people, yeah, it's been fun doing that too. And for every good connection you have, you might have someone who, hey, you said this, and then you can go back and forth and make your point. It is funny with these anonymous message boards, but when you actually get to know some of these people, the stories can be really nice. So
yeah.
R.I.P. Nogales.
Yeah, we got a super chat while we're doing this. There's just a lot going on. I'm like my head's spinning. James, does Riley run an Ivory Towers staff and program?
What does he mean by that?
Okay, so I'm not exactly sure, but was it as far as like he's sort of isolated? So like if you're just making your decrees from there, I think he does.
Privileged seclusion.
I think there's
to Google it.
Okay, yeah, like there's an insulation there, I think, but I think that's more of his like personality than anything.
I mean, he could do a better job of getting out there in the community. One other thing with this Hayden Lowe thing, like the fact that he made a point to talk about how Miami has always prioritized him. Like for USC, how does like prioritizing those Georgia kids look right about now when, none of those really high impact defensive linemen that they went out of their way to prioritize and emphasize in the summer are committed. And now Hayden Lowe, a guy, I don't know, who's in your backyard, who you probably should have given that same effort to those Georgia guys that you did. Like you should have done the same with him. Like he's not here anymore, and he talks about how Miami feels like he felt like with Miami they've given him that treatment the whole way. Like this whole the summer, the Cloud9, we did the show with Shotgun. Like Justice Terry's committed, Isaiah Gibson, like USC, here we go, and now those guys aren't committed, and then you lose a guy who you have no business losing in your backyard who plays that same position because he didn't feel like he was getting the same effort from those players. So it's like, how many times can you get kicked in the nuts?
Yeah. Too many for USC fans' sake, for sure. But the good thing, the Cilantro Boys will be back tonight.
Yes.
And so the show will post tomorrow morning. They don't do it live on YouTube. I try to talk them into it sometimes, but they don't really want to do it. But
that will get a lot of listens.
Yeah. So the composite 2-star recruits, if you're listening to this in podcast format, it'll be the next show that drops on this feed. So check it out. If you're watching live, then Beck, I love this, Beck. He says, so he's live on YouTube. Oh, sorry, I put the wrong one on. He says, does anyone else work? Why are so many people on here? Yeah. No, that's true, Beck. This is Southern California, man. There's alternate careers and employment, a lot of that. But there's people from all over the country, and we get listeners from all over the world. So it could be late somewhere else. In Europe, it's not that bad probably, right? Or is it? No, it's probably like late night in Europe. Yeah. So that's where we are right now. So there's all that going on. Oh, and by the way, there was some other breaking news. Do you remember the NCAA Trojan fans? Yep. They're kind of toothless right now. They're like the Abominable Snowman and what's that? The Christmas special, Bumble's Bounce. What was the? It's the
sure.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer one where they're afraid of the Abominable Snowman, and the elf that wants to be a dentist takes out all his teeth, so he doesn't have any bite anymore. The NCAA is like that; they don't have much bite anymore. But they gave USC a little slap on the wrist, breaking a rule that doesn't exist anymore. But could have been a lot worse. $50,000 fine, a year probation. What do you know about this, Connor?
Well, who the heck ratted on him? That's what I want to know. what team went out of their way to say, hey, I think those look like analysts at USC. Let me check this video. Oh, yeah, that is an analyst. Oh, yeah, they're doing something they should be doing here. NCAA, look at this. USC had, 6 more coaches on the field than they should have. What are we going to do? Oh, the horror. That's my first question. Why did the NCAA find out about this? You're telling me other schools don't have analysts on the field doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. So I understand that with the NCAA having a smoking gun, like if it's clearly, okay, that's an analyst, you got us red-handed, like they have to do something. But who the heck turned him in? That's my first question. And Riley yesterday talked about how the fact that he didn't get suspended means that this wasn't really that big of an infraction. I mean, it wasn't that big of an infraction, but I don't know if that was the lesson learned. He did take his medicine at the end and talk about how, we got to be better and we'll learn from this. I just start, though, with who the heck ratted on him? Who do you think? Utah?
I don't know, but it was apparently from some kind of social media post or something.
Was it from Sights and Sounds? Did we mess
I don't think
up?
it's from us. Maybe it's us. Maybe it's our fault.
Maybe it was USC football social media, and I don't know. But you're telling me that doesn't happen in other places? So
yeah.
That was surprising to me.
So it's kind of weird. There were talks that it could have been a Lincoln Riley suspension for a game. That didn't happen. So I think for Jim Harbaugh, like when he was suspended for 6 games last year, it didn't matter as much. For USC, it would matter because Riley calls a play. So he's like, it's not just like you need someone to oversee the game. Like you'd have to replace your play caller. So that would have been a bigger deal. If it was one of the openers, which usually that's what they're for, it would have been San Jose State last year. But this year it would have been LSU. So that would have been pretty bad if he was suspended for the LSU game. But that didn't happen. And like I said, the rule that they broke doesn't exist anymore. So, it's very different. It's not like, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world, but it was kind of interesting. The NCAA dropped that on their website. I think you were the first one to put it out there, Connor. We were hearing about this a little bit, and we weren't sure what was gonna, when it was gonna come out or whatever. But we knew it wasn't that serious, but it was eventually going to come out, and then it did. So more weird news in this bye week.
Yeah, just the cherry on top of a bad year for USC. The good news is they've made a quarterback change and they have a chance here to beat their 2 rivals and finish 7-5. But if the best case scenario is 7-5 at this point, unless Maiyava's putting up 50 points a game, like there's really not that much left there that will get people too excited. So hopefully USC's found its quarterback for the future. But I mean, the NCAA sanctions, the win-loss record, the state of recruiting, like, God, I just wish it was going better for so many of these facets of this program. And, just the proof's in the pudding and stuff isn't really looking too good.
Yeah, there was a lot of optimism and until there wasn't. And I know I got an article today. Someone sent me something about like USC being one of the top 3 unluckiest teams as far as like, the wins and, being able to lose 5 games, but you were ahead in all of them in the fourth quarter. There's some luck factor there too, but there's also things that you can control. As Steve says, snitches get stitches. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's getting stitches for this one, but sure, maybe.
I want to know who it was. It has to be someone who
I'm guessing like Utah or something.
USC, but maybe could it be someone on the schedule this year who was like looking to try to get any advantage they could? Like I don't know what the rationale would be. Like, why are other teams looking at USC's social media potentially? And just a weird one. Like the headline, USC on probation for coaching violations. You think like, oh, this is going to be some huge story. Then you read the fine print and it's like they had analysts acting as coaches when by definition analysts are, they're not on-field coaches, but they're also coaches. They're part of the coaching staff. Like, God forbid you have a few more instructors than you should. So it's a slap on the wrist, and it needed to be done because the NCAA had clear evidence that USC broke a rule that was in place. But I have no idea how they found out about it. That would be my first question to the NCAA. And I don't even think USC knows how this came about because
I'm not sure.
It's not like the NCAA would say, yeah, this school tattled on you. So only the NCAA knows, and just I don't blame USC fans for being frustrated saying the NCAA only goes after us. Like, have you ever heard of anyone getting in trouble for this before ever? Maybe someone has and I haven't seen it, but like, no, just a weird one.
There's some weird stuff going on there, but whatever. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But whatever, it's something you got to talk about. The NCAA did come out with this. So, all right, what else do we got going on? Oh, by the way, it's homecoming this weekend. Did I miss other topics? We covered a bunch.
The jerseys?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Like homecoming, and USC is going to go for alternate jerseys. Yes, throwbacks. And I don't remember them ever doing this. Someone said maybe Pete Carroll's second year they did something that was potentially, but those were kind of new back then, I think. The jerseys that they have now, I think those were kind of new. Like this one, if you're watching, not with the Big Ten logo on it, but the gold like stripe or whatever it is, the swoosh on the, I don't know. There's names for that stuff. I'm not a uniform guy. I don't really know. But when I was in school, I'll put up there, they looked more like this, where you had like the yellow stripe and then the two white stripes. And I believe this was a John McKay thing, 1972. So I think someone in the chat was saying like when I graduated, like, no, that's not, that wasn't the case, but I get it what you're saying. Yeah, so they're going to do these throwback jerseys, and I think they look pretty cool. I don't know what you think about them, but they're going to wear them this weekend.
I think they look really cool, and I like that USC isn't making a change wearing a uniform that they've never worn before. I like that they're valuing the tradition, and I do think they look really cool, so I'm looking forward to seeing that unfold on Saturday. The timing of it was unfortunate where they announced it, and it was like, oh, this really good thing. We're going to wear throwback uniforms. And then an hour later, the NCAA dropped the probation, so I don't know if that was by design because I think USC knew it was coming, but finally you had some good headlines for like an hour, and then they got overlooked by the NCAA stuff. So that was too bad, but I know fans are excited, and this is the first time they've ever done something like this outside of the Sarkeesian different helmets, right?
That I can remember, yeah. People were asking. Someone said like Pete Carroll's second year, but I thought the uniforms were kind of new that year. If anyone remembers in the chat, but yeah, Sark would do like they had like the chrome helmets, which I didn't think looked very good. I know Dan Weber was a big fan, but sometimes they've changed little things like shoelaces and socks, and people like flip out, and I'm like, I don't even know. I couldn't tell you what color shoes they wear right now because I just don't. That's just not something that registers with me. But like obviously the uniform. It's classic. They haven't been that major change, but I just remember when I was in school, they looked more like this. If you're watching on YouTube with, so they have the gold pants, the Cardinal jersey, and then the, right above the shoulder area is a wide yellow stripe followed by two, surrounded by two smaller white stripes. And then if you look at, the current uniforms, it's more like a Nike swoosh, like a yellow swoosh without no white on the corner. And then they have the numbers on the shoulders and stuff too. So a little bit different but I think those started like in the peak, like around the Pete Carroll era when they kind of got the new ones, but I could be wrong on that.
Classy. I like it a lot, and good time to do it. Homecoming game, that should get people excited. And I definitely think it's a good story in a year where, there haven't been as many. And I know some people get kind of like annoyed with the uniform stuff. I haven't seen any complaints. Have you?
No, it seems like people are positive about them,
yeah.
Which is great. Like I think they look kind of cool. And, you don't want to be Oregon, and that's just not who USC is. They still don't put the names on the jerseys. They have the tradition, and there's a lot of schools that do that, like the Penn States of the world and stuff. There's just traditions there. And I think USC fans value that tradition. So like what you mentioned, they didn't come up with some crazy like gray version or whatever. It was just, this is what we used to have. And that's kind of where they're going. Oh, sorry, the stupid things right here. So yeah, I like them. I think they're cool. I'm not a big, like I said, I'm not the dude to talk about if you think uniforms are great or suck or whatever. Like when people complain about them, like I don't care that much. I do like tradition. Going back to an old uniform, seems pretty cool. So, yeah, I'm cool with it.
Me too. And hopefully they'll play like they did under Pete Carroll. That's what people want to see. So
you want to see that. But I think that we'll have to look it up. But I think Pete Carroll, maybe they switched to this when it was Paul Hackett. I don't remember, but I think they switched to the ones or a version of what they have now around that, turn of the century kind of thing. So, It was somewhere in that range, I believe, if I remember correctly, which I don't always remember correctly because, again, like I said, I'm not a big uniform guy. We still got a lot of talk about recruiting in the chat, and we'll get to some more of that too. I think we'll answer a few questions later on that. But it is homecoming, and USC is playing the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Seems like a common theme this year, Connor, has been the Trojans have been a lot of teams sort of get right game. You know, they've lost some tough ones. I don't know. Minnesota had lost 6 straight games, I think, to FBS programs. Oh, they get right and they beat USC. Maryland hadn't won, still hasn't won a Big Ten game outside of USC, if I'm not mistaken. They get that one win against USC. You know, Washington struggles, lose a couple in a row on the road, come back home, get the big win against USC, and then go get thumped by Penn State the week later. You know, it's yeah, you don't want to be everyone's get right game. And Nebraska is coming in definitely needing a get right. I think they were 5-1. I believe they had a bye. Get smoked by Indiana by like 1 million. So it was 56-7 or something. Almost beat Ohio State on the road, lose that one. Get punked by UCLA at home. Then they get another bye. They're sitting out trying to figure this crap out. Switched offensive coordinators to a dude that's only been in the building like a week. Dana Holgerson, who has a relationship with Lincoln Riley. Man, they would love to. This is a get-right game for the Huskers. And USC can't let another team be like, we made our season by beating USC. Like, it's happened a few times, and they can't let it happen again.
Their offense is not good right now, which is why they made the change. And I guess the reason that they made their offensive coordinator change and elected to have it be Dana Holgerson instead of someone already on staff, like Holgerson, like you said, Ryan, he was hired as an analyst like last week, and now he's their offensive coordinator. But the reason they did that was because they were afraid that if their offensive output continued the way it was going, that Dylan Raiola would leave. I watched the full UCLA-Nebraska game, and I thought Raiola was at fault for a lot of what happened offensively in that game. And he's a true freshman. You're going to expect some bumps and bruises, but like he had time and had opportunities to make throws, and he would just hang on to the ball forever and ever and ever and ever. And so if you're a Nebraska fan, you'll hope that Holgerson will coach them out of that, or him out of that. But we'll see. Like, how much can you possibly change with a new staff member in a week? We'll see on Saturday. I'm kind of skeptical. This move seems panicky to me. I think USC will be able to outscore Nebraska because Nebraska's offense just hasn't been very good. But is there an outside chance that Holgerson makes a big difference and they turn some things around? Sure. USC, like you said, Ryan, has been a lot of teams get-right games. But I felt like that was a real panicky move where at least USC with their quarterback change, like you have the bye week, and Nebraska was on a bye too, but Holgerson was named the offensive coordinator like Monday.
Right.
So.
It wasn't like they came out of that loss to UCLA like, all right, we're making the switch.
Yeah.
You know?
It seems like, again, USC isn't having a great year. I'm not saying that, but like their quarterback change seems a little bit more of like a smarter move than what Nebraska's doing. But hey, I guess Nebraska was desperate and they got to make a change. Their defense is solid, and we saw what they did against Ohio State, but UCLA had some success against them, and it is a new quarterback for USC, but I really expect USC to beat Nebraska. They're, 9.5-point favorites for a reason. It's just not a very good team. They're in a bad way right now. They'll be desperate, but USC should be desperate too, losing 4 or 5.
Yeah, there's 2 desperate teams. I mean, what happened last week or 2 weeks ago? It was like, oh, Washington's desperate, USC's desperate. What happened? What was the 3-game losing streak? Both teams were. Was that last week? Yeah, was that Washington? Both games on a 3-game losing streak. I think it was.
Yeah, that sounds.
No, that wasn't it.
No, but last week was no one went. Like they both stunk on the road.
Yes, they were both road. Yeah, there was a lot of those like common themes going on, and you can't be on the other end of it. But like Washington, they're bad at special teams. They had a good special teams day against USC. When you're looking at what does Nebraska do well, like they're bad at special teams also. Well, it didn't matter 2 weeks ago against Washington. You let them have a good day on special teams, and USC had a bad one. Nebraska's offense doesn't score points. They're just over 22 points a game. USC allows about 22 a game, but the last 3, Nebraska's averaging like about 2 touchdowns, about 14, a little over 14. You can't let them score like 32 and get, figure something out against you. Like, this has got to be one of those games where you keep Nebraska to what they've been doing. And I think that's what USC's problem has kind of been is if you just, what is their strengths, what are their weaknesses, don't allow one of their weaknesses to somehow be a strength. And if Nebraska scores a bunch of points, I think they have 8 kicks blocked. I mean, they've had a ton of, it's been horrible on the Nebraska side. You can't let them get those advantages where they're normally bad. And I think, unfortunately, it just seems like USC has been allowing that for a lot of these games.
Yeah, that's how I read it too. Like, don't be the get-right game. Don't let this team that has struggled do what they haven't been able to do against other teams. UCLA had a lot of success moving the ball against Nebraska. I expect USC to be able to move the ball. The one area that I am concerned about, Nebraska's defensive line has some pretty good interior defensive linemen, so the interior of USC's offensive line has been pretty solid lately, but like a guy like Alani Noah going up against some of those more experienced interior pass rushers for Nebraska, that's a matchup that Nebraska could have some success. So historically, the teams with really good defenses and then offenses that might not be quite as good but can score points have given USC a lot of trouble, but I feel like Nebraska is a step below in both of those things where I think they have a good defense and I think they have a bad offense. So it's a winnable game. It's not like a Notre Dame team last year where they have a really good defense and a solid offense that's good enough to outscore you. So, hey, they got to play the game, as we say, but USC's been so good at home, too, this year. So I like them this week.
Yeah, I kind of do, too, but holy cow. It's one of those things where, really? Is that where we are? It's just, you just don't know. But USC's been better at home. Nebraska, I think, got broken by Indiana. Yeah. Maybe they can get right. You make a change. Who knows? I'll post. I did a good 5 questions with Brian Christensen over for Christofferson over at our Nebraska Huskers 247 site. So stay tuned for that up on USCfootball.com. We always do our in-depth preview with Tom Hare. He does a great job with all those and stuff too. So get it out. Whew. All right. Should we take a break here, I think?
Sure, get some questions.
Yeah, we got some questions to get to. So why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break and we'll be back in a minute, everybody. All righty. We're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. We're live on YouTube. Actually went live on Facebook again today too. So if you're on Facebook, hey, if you're watching on Facebook Live, we want to take some questions from you. So I think all the questions and comments right now are from our YouTube audience. But if you're on Facebook and you want to leave us a comment or a question, put it in there and I'll be able to pop it up on the screen. Okay. There's a lot of stuff going on in the chat about firing coaches and all this kind of stuff. As we talked about many times, everybody, that ain't happening. Riley could leave, but what NFL team is going to hire him?
The Bears.
USC can't. I guess the Bears could. That would probably be, if you're trying to get rid of Lincoln Riley, that's probably the best case scenario for USC. But they can't pay a $90 million buyout. Sorry. They're just not. If they wanted to fire Lincoln Riley, they are not able to at this juncture. So I'm sorry. That's just the harsh reality of things. I know a lot of people want this to change, but that's not going to change. Let's see. Let's go to this first question. We have an email. I'm sorry.
Ryan, Coach Hyde, and the crew. This is Sneaky Pete in Seattle. I just want to talk about talent on the field. As I was sitting in Husky Stadium getting soaked, watching another predictable loss, it finally occurred to me that our team is simply average. There are only 2 areas where the USC Trojans have any appreciable advantage: punter and receiver depth. This is just not the making of an elite team. I expect all of our remaining games to also be a coin flip. I'm embarrassed it took me 9 games to figure this out. Hopefully next year we can bring in some 5 stars that will actually see the field for a change. SP out.
Thanks, SP.
What have we been talking about? What have I been talking about all year? about that elite talent. That's what you need. The coaching can only do so much. So, yeah, against LSU, that sort of made me think, okay, maybe they do have more talent than I think. But, I mean, their pass rush wasn't great in that game, and that's been a huge issue all season. The offensive line was up and down in that game. They got lucky with a couple of the one Miller Moss strip sacks. So, like, the issues that we've seen sort of, persist this year, they still were there in that LSU game. They just did a better job of covering it up, and, of course, injuries happened. So, yeah, you need really good players. Look at the teams that are on top of college football right now. Like, I guess Indiana, and there's some other teams where you could say, well, they maybe don't have as much talent as these other teams, but consistently, like, Texas has done awesome with recruiting, and they're in the mix. And, Alabama, Georgia, of course, and Tennessee right now, they're a team. Ole Miss just beat Georgia. So,
yeah,
you got to –
they got a lot of dudes from the portal on that defensive line, and it worked.
Yeah, you can be a TCU who made the playoff, the national championship a couple of years ago. You can be in Indiana, but the best way to do it is just to have the best players. And USC right now does not have that.
No, they haven't. And, Indiana has great coaching, and they brought over a lot of guys that were like our kind of guys that they know the system. And you can do well with that. I think even we're looking at Colorado, like the success they've had, like, they've been able to bring in some guys that have worked. I think you need to bring in guys that can gel and work in your system and everything. And Kirk Cignetti brought over a lot of guys from James Madison, and it's been working out well. We'll see. They're going to play Ohio State coming up, so that should be fun.
And we'll see what happens with them going forward. Lincoln Riley brought guys from Oklahoma and was great his first year, and then has gotten worse. Like, is that just the fact that he has some good players who followed him, or is this going to be success that they can maintain? Based on what's happened at USC, I'd be skeptical that Indiana is going to be this great team year in and year out here.
Yeah. D. Patel, he's 1-0 so far when attending. He's going to try to bring luck on Saturday. So thank you for that. But, yeah, if you have questions, and I'm going to star them in the chat. We do have a bunch of emails and another voicemail to get to, but put it up there, and I will start and come back to it a little bit later. John in Oakland, he wrote twice. He was so, he's a little fired up. There doesn't appear to be a seasoned offensive assistant coach or someone around Coach Riley that he can bounce ideas or thoughts off of, whisper in his ear after practices or games, quietly questioning and critiquing some of his head-scratching decisions and calling plays. He's still a very young head coach and doesn't have a mentor or peer to offer objective criticism and constructive suggestions. Compare this with the coaching staff on the defensive side. Do you think this is an unsaid issue as to why USC is so underperforming, that it really has to do with Coach Riley being isolated and alone in a bubble when it comes to the management of the offense and team? And he has a follow-up that it's possible he could need a mentor or peer around him. He said it's something that he would have to recognize and decide to seek out. It's not something that Jen Cohen, the athletic director, or boosters could force upon him, which raises the quote, catch-22 question. Is he mature enough to realize this need? Very insightful there, John. I agree with everything he said.
Well, what if he just changes course? Why does someone need to tell him to change course? Why does he need to bring someone in who will tell him to do all these different things? What's their record in the last 16 games? 6-10. Why do you need someone to be like, oh, you're not doing this right? Look in the mirror. Are things good right now? Is the recruiting where it should be? Are the results where they should be? You can believe all you want that you're building this thing and it's going in the right direction, but it's clearly not right now. And I don't know why he needs to bring in someone to tell him what to do. The buck stops with him. He needs to learn and he needs to be better. It's not some magic fix we'll bring in some older analyst who's going to come in and tell Lincoln Riley what to do. Get out of here. That's not going to happen. He needs to change.
Yeah, but I think, his point, though, is if, Pete Carroll's around, right? Jen Cohen has a great relationship with Chris Peterson. There's potential mentors that have done it and succeeded. And, if you are looking in the mirror, you're going, man, I think we're this close, but we've lost 10 of our last 16 games. That's not good enough. And you need another pair of eyes to hey, what are you seeing? And I think if anyone tried to tell Lincoln Riley, hey, we're going to have this guy come help you, that like John was saying, that wouldn't work. He has to kind of come to that realization himself. I think he's more of the person that would try to figure it out himself if he admits that there's a problem than going from the outside. Just from what I know about him, like just from seeing him, that just doesn't seem like him. But I think it would probably be helpful if he had that kind of relationship with a mentor or something like that. But but I think it comes from looking in the mirror and going, we need to make a change, as opposed to sort of being defiant and like, everything we're doing is right, we've just been unlucky. And that's just not the case.
But Ryan, he wouldn't change 99.9% of what they're doing.
Yeah, that's
the 0.1 had changed. No, I just look at, like, he does change. He overhauled the defensive staff. It was just a little bit too late. And maybe not a little bit. It was way too late. Is he going to maybe make a change? Like, just it's nice that he does recognize that stuff needs to happen. It's just so late a lot. So maybe does someone come in and tell him to change? Yes, but, like, he controls everything. If you were in charge and were making the money that he was making, like, would you want to bring someone in to bounce ideas off of? No, like, I have this money for a reason. We're going to do what I want to do. And he just needs to come to that realization that they need to do some things differently on his own.
All right. We got Don. This doesn't get better, by the way. Riley has become the new Clay Helton. Does not admit he's ever wrong. Just blames the refs, depth, miscommunication, etc. Last game, down by 5. Should have kicked a field goal. I don't know about that one, but more difficult to defend against a team that needs a field goal to win rather than a TD. Switching to a new quarterback infers that Moss is the problem. He better forget about catching Oregon. Just try and compete with UCLA. The Helton era made it very difficult to believe in USC again. Riley has done little to bring back the belief. Regards from Don.
I totally get it. I mean, who would have ever thought that USC would have trouble getting a quarterback in back-to-back high school classes? But that's the reality right now. Like, you bring a guy like Lincoln Riley in, you think, okay, we could lose some games, sure, but at least we'll always have a good offense and we'll always be able to recruit offense well. But NIL comes in and changes things. They switch leagues. Like, there are some factors that have made it tough for Lincoln Riley to do what he used to do, and he hasn't adapted well. So I understand the frustration, and right now things aren't going well. I sort of thought, Ryan, like, in the offseason, if USC finished this year strong and, like, had some momentum, like, a lot of things would change. But I think the issues are deeper than I imagined, and we're sort of seeing those play out in real time here. So I don't know what the fix is. Like, if Riley does have a philosophical change, like, how long does that take to where they're back where they should be? Because they're looking at best, like, back-to-back 7 and 5 seasons. You don't know who the quarterback is next year. You're going to have some holes on the roster. Like, there are so many transfers they took who are in their final years of eligibility. Guys are going to go to the NFL. Like, if they don't start changing things quick, like, next year could get dicey.
I mean, it's dicey right now.
Yeah.
Like, it could get very dicey. All right, we got another voicemail. Let me play it for you.
Great job, guys. Appreciate all the insight coming up to this next game Saturday against Nebraska. I've been watching some college football today, and I noticed the one thing we just don't have is we don't have the defensive linemen or the depth or the offensive linemen. All these teams that are doing well, they can get to the quarterback with 4 down linemen. And looking back at the Pete Carroll years and the years that we were successful, we were able to get 4 down linemen that could get to the quarterback and apply pressure. And right now, we just don't have the horses. So I'd like to know what's going on with the recruiting on the defensive line and the offensive line, because we surely need the help there. Otherwise, this is a lost cause. Look forward to hearing from you.
Timely question there, as USC loses an important piece on their defensive line, and they're probably going to lose one of their best tackles to Colorado, too, on the offensive line. So if the way things are going, like, if it looks like the way things are going, that's how it's going to be, then it's going to be one blue-chip offensive line recruit and then no blue-chip defensive line recruits, and those are the 2 positions where they've needed the most help. So that's frustrating. And, yeah, I mean, this was like the whole thing that we talked about in the offseason. The trench play with USC, is it good enough in the Big Ten? And, I mean, clearly no. Eric Gentry's injury was a killer, and the offensive line is improving, but, like, you can't go out and do what you did against Michigan on the offensive line. Like, I know Lincoln Riley talks all about, like, the development has to start somewhere, and that's true. But if you're going to put out a group that does what that group did on that day, like, forget about development. Like I don't care how much better those guys get. That was kind of embarrassing for an offensive line to do what they did against Michigan, where you had guys not getting out of their stances and just the amount of pressure that Moss was under. That's the game where I think he totally lost his confidence and still hasn't really gotten it back. And now we've seen what's happened with USC as a result. So, yeah, the trench play is something that I've talked a lot about. I felt like it wasn't good enough going into the season, and here we are where they have no sacks pretty much every game, and the offensive line has been better, but like you're still a little bit concerned about the tackles, and then there still could be a big mistake waiting to happen, as we saw against Minnesota, against Maryland. Like, it hasn't been perfect for sure.
We got an email from Jack in New Jersey. He says, I've been a USC fan since 1974 and the Anthony Davis led comeback. My two oldest daughters have graduated from University of South Carolina and University of Miami, which makes me fans of those schools as well. His question, what would USC and the U look like at this time had Lincoln Riley been able to get Cam Ward to come to USC for this season? Just an interesting thought. I do feel bad for Miller Moss. The season has just not gone as expected for anyone. Jack in New Jersey.
Sorry, what was the part of that question?
So what if they got Cam Ward?
Oh.
And what would happen to Miami? Miami would be screwed. And then USC would probably be better. So I don't think.
Well, Ward, he demanded the most money, so.
I mean, he was going to the NFL and then came back for.
Which he never should have gone to the NFL. That didn't make any sense to me. I wonder if they could have outbid Ohio State then for their quarterback, and then maybe the
for
dominoes fall.
Will Howard.
Yeah. But assuming they didn't get either one of those guys, who would they have been in on? I don't know. But they would have gotten a quarterback. USC, would have been way better for sure. But like, I don't know how many wins that leads to, like 100%. So they have problems that are so far on the quarterback, which we've talked a lot about. But if Cam Ward was here, so what? They're 4-5 right now. I mean, we can go through the games, I guess. Like, I'm not convinced that they 100% beat Penn State. Maybe. I
mean, the fact that they were up by 14 in that game, and I think with Ward, you probably keep that lead.
You think so?
I don't know. Like
that to me felt like the defense just totally screwed them over. Like,
yeah.
But hey, like, this is why this is so frustrating to talk about. We have no idea what freaking would happen. But yeah, okay, fine. I'll give you Penn State. Like, my point is, I don't think they'd be this for sure college football playoff team. Like, stuff still would have gone wrong, and they would definitely have more wins. I'm not trying to say that, or I'm not trying to not say that, but like, they would not be this way better, like top 5, no doubt team. Like, look at all the stuff we've talked about this whole show. Like, it's not just the quarterback. The head coach has all these issues. The defensive line has all these issues. You've had terrible injury luck. You've just had bad luck in general. The offensive line's went up and down. Like, this team is a lot further away than I think some people still fail to recognize.
Yeah, and I would say if you watch Cam Ward at Washington State last year, he wasn't very good. He was kind of a check down master. Like, the offense wasn't great. He's playing in a really good system now. He's been heroic late in games. And maybe he could have done that. Like, that USC needs that late heroics, right? They had that against LSU, and they haven't had it since. So maybe that's that late drive. He leads you to a score when you need it, and they've just not been able to get that in most of these games. So I think it could have been a bunch more wins. But we've also seen him not be. He's way better than he was last year, and that's with a lot of better players around him. He had a lot better play. He wouldn't have the same kind of thing here at USC.
No, I don't think it would lead to a lot more wins. I do I'll give him 2 wins, but I don't think it's like this crazy deal where it just changed everything. I think it's been proven out this way that they have way more issues than just the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So,
let's go to Danny, class of 2000. I assume as a play caller, Lincoln Riley creates the various plays the team runs, both passing and running plays. Here's his question. Maybe he just has no idea how to create run plays. Maybe he just can't come up with many other than some tired and true cliches that are defended easily by other teams. Maybe because he's from the Leach Air Raid tree, he can whip up 10 pass plays in his sleep, but draws a blank to come up with one run play. Does Lincoln Riley not run the ball because he just has no running plays to call? Perhaps an offensive coordinator can lend a hand. Thanks and fight on, from Danny.
I don't know if we should even give that email the time of day. Of course he knows how to call run plays. Come on.
He's had 1,000-yard rushers.
He's had great running backs. His whole offense is I mean, you wouldn't tell from this year, but historically it's
Right.
run to set up the pass. And I don't know why they got away from that this year. The offensive line was pretty bad in the beginning of the year, and they did struggle to run the ball, but they've gotten a lot better. So, no, he knows how to call run plays. Come
Yes, I would say that's not that's not accurate. But it's people are mad, and they just want to come up with reasons of why this is happening. Maybe he just doesn't know how to run the ball. That's just not the case. But they haven't done it this year, which is the problem. That's what you care about. It's great that he's had a lot of success in the past. It's great that he's had this or that, but you don't have it this year. You didn't have it last year.
He ran the ball on 3 straight third downs against Washington. Like
that was one,
He's running it. It's not like it's just pass every single time. The first half against Washington, they ran it 8 times. That wasn't enough, but I think some people are getting a little crazy with he doesn't know how to call running plays. Come on.
I would think that. Yeah. Let's go. We're going to do some chat questions and we'll get
great.
out of here. Is that good? Steve, basic stuff. What makes someone a quote great recruiter? Is it how good you are at selling yourself and the program? Or is it so much more than that?
That's a big part of it, but it's the relentlessness. It's calling these kids all the time. It's going to their schools. It's just showing them how much you really care, and a lot of it's tedious. I don't blame some of these coaches when
it's not
Chip
fun.
Kelly hated recruiting because he hated doing that stuff. So I understand why some people aren't as good recruiters. It's not fun. It's annoying to text high school kids all the time, but that's what you have to do. You have to be a grinder. You have you can't rest on your laurels.
Right.
I think something that we've seen with Lincoln Riley, it's I just produce Heisman Trophy quarterbacks. If that's what you want, then come here. Whereas a guy who maybe doesn't have that resume, he will choose a different route. And obviously money's a huge part of it. But if he's talking to that kid every day, kind of negatively recruiting against Riley, just wearing him down, who do you think that kid's going to pick? It's going to be the guy who is just in his ear all the time. So that I think is a big part of it too. You have to be relentless, and selling yourself and being personable, that's a huge part of it. But just the relentlessness that those Oregon assistants have, which we've heard a lot about, what Texas A&M is doing right now, we've heard a lot about that stuff, being relentless. That's the word that comes to mind when I hear that question.
There's a lot of politician in it, where, you got to make people feel good because they're making a choice. If you're a salesman and you're selling PlayStations and someone's selling Xboxes, it's when Connor buys the Xbox from me, I want him to go home and not only just love that he has an Xbox, but want to tell his friends that have PlayStations that they're idiots because I made this choice. You really want to feel good about the choice you make. You're making this big choice to go to college. Now, a lot of this has changed because you can change your mind and go somewhere else the next year if you want to. So you're not locked in forever if you go someplace. And obviously money is a big part of it. So the whole recruiting game has changed a lot, but there's still aspects to it that have the basics of, are you calling me? Are you DMing me? Are you on me? Are you relentless? Like Connor was saying. And I'll relate the story. Ed Orgeron, when I was covering him and he was with Pete Carroll, left to go be the head coach at Ole Miss. And I had a pretty good relationship with him when he was here. And I think it was 2009, the John David Booty year. Who's the Delaware quarterback? Joe Flacco. He was there I was in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. And because USC had 9 dudes in the Senior Bowl, that's crazy. I flew down there to cover it. And Orgeron had been fired by Ole Miss at the time, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. And I see him, and I hadn't seen him for a few years. And I go up to say, "Hey, Coach O, I'm Ryan Abraham." And he grabs my hand and is like, "Hey, Ron, I know who you are." He remembered, me and just was made me feel, oh my God, this guy, he was the head coach here. And he's telling me, "Stop, I know who you are. Great to see you," all that kind of stuff. How do you feel? You feel pretty darn good about yourself. There's these hedges, where we were, and then there's hedges and there's the field. And on the other side of these hedges were a family, and they just start screaming while I'm talking to Coach O, "Hey, Coach Ocho," they were going bananas for Coach O. It was Deshaun Jackson's family. He was committed to USC and he ended up going to Cal. But the relationship that they built with Orgeron, they freaking loved him. And so even going to another school, for whatever reasons that was, it's you still, this is years later, and they still had this affinity for him and how good of a recruiter he was and good of a person. So, I mean, that's the kind of great recruiting that I've seen up close. And yes, it's a different game now. It's changed a lot. But that's the reality of, are you getting that from ever? And he's a rare breed, right? But those are the kind of people, like if you combine that with great NIL, like you're going to be really hard to beat. And it seems like that's what Oregon has right now.
Great example with Coach O. He's an awesome recruiter. And because of those relationships, like that's the other R word that we should talk about, relentlessness and relationships and him remembering you. And I know stories like from high school coaches that I worked with in the past where they weren't going to have a kid who would sniff playing football at USC. And Coach O would come out of his way to, hey, you might have someone for me in 5 years. I just want to start a dialogue, start a relationship. So I think people see the genuineness in it too. And some people will be listening to this and say it's all about the money. And that's a huge part of it too, of course. But like the genuine relationship, the relentless pursuit of these guys, like that does make a big difference too. And USC clearly really hasn't been doing well enough with both. So it's a problem.
Let's this is not really a question, but Joe, Lincoln hates California prospects. Maybe it's a true or false question.
I don't think he hates them, but like they haven't been getting enough of them. He did go to, like, the funny thing is Riley was at Oaks Christian. Chris and I saw him. We were about to talk to him, and then he left on Friday. Like the kid who just decommitted, he was at his high school game on Friday. So that doesn't tell me that he hates California prospects. That tells me that they just struck out. So he could have done a better job in 2024 and 2025 for sure. They have a chance in 2026 to get back in, and I do think like the 2026 and 2027 classes in California are good. So I expect USC to be better, but I get like why he's commenting that. They have more commits from frickin' Georgia than they do in California.
Yeah,
right now. That's
a problem. You get paid way too much money. You got to figure this out. Like you can't. It can't be this way. You can't have these kind of late decommitments and things. HR Pickin' Stuff had a question. Riley has lost almost every head-to-head battle with Oregon for elite top defensive line and offensive line transfer portal players. What evidence that we have that will change?
Yeah, great question. I don't have any evidence until they go out and actually get a win. I don't know what you could point to that would say, oh, they're going to do better in the future because of this. Like maybe NIL, like we've talked about, they have to overpay Ryan just to get a win, just to get some good PR.
Yeah.
Obviously, getting the player would help too because you're hopefully getting someone really good if you're paying a lot of money. But we know it's a crapshoot. You can pay a lot for a really good player, and they might not pan out. We've seen that happen. So I don't have any evidence as to like USC being able to 1,000% compete because I'm not like they can say one thing, but until they consistently have done it, like I wrote a whole story on signing day last year about the guys that they haven't been able to get, and like head to head in 2025, like Lowe, I guess it was between USC and Oregon for a little bit, and now he's at Miami. So like it's not always just USC and Oregon. Sometimes there are other schools. Looking at the list of 2025 commits, though, I don't know. Has USC won a battle over Oregon? I don't think so. So I can't give you any answer on that, and that's probably tough to hear, but that's the reality.
Yeah, and I'll give you some positivity for the portal. The portal is not the long cycle that high school recruiting is. This is over a couple of weeks. So it's sort of like, I'm not going to like fast for all of Lent, 40 days. Like it's just too long. Like if you're incapable of doing that, but like you could do it for a weekend, that's sort of like what portal recruiting is. Like I can do this. I just need to be disciplined for this weekend. Just get in, contact with this player, offer him a bunch of money, tell him why it's really cool where I am, and see if he'll come. And I think there's some opportunities there that if you have decent money, and USC has that now, that you could try to win some head-to-head battles because it's not going to be the long, relentless recruiting process that it is for high school players. So maybe there's some optimism there.
Aaron Dunn was an offensive lineman who committed to Utah, but Oregon was on him as well, and he's committed to USC now, so maybe that's someone. But in terms of like defensive linemen, tough list to, there really isn't a list of guys USC's beaten Oregon on.
We've had some overpay talk, and this was a question from Christopher. He needs to overpay for some of his high school recruits that will start next year, like Jakeem. We need some of this pay-for-play kids and retain them for 3 years. That was my theory, was just overpay for some dudes. Now I was thinking more portal, but but you need to be, like, you can say, like, even if the money's there, if you're not recruiting that hard, it's hard to get these high school players also, you know. Then you have to pay even more because you haven't recruited as hard. So you have to overpay. And if you're competing with programs like Miami and Oregon, they're overpaying, like, then you have to really overpay. So yeah, I think it has to be combined with recruit the hell out of them, be the relentless, be like the pain in the ass that they can't get away from.
What frustrates me with this whole thing too is, like, how much does this have to happen where, like, we got to be more skeptical, like, oh, it's just a money thing. Every time they lose a big time kid, oh, it's a money thing. Oh, it's a money thing. Oh, it's a money thing. Like, fine. Is USC all of a sudden like New Mexico State? Like, they have money too. Like, it doesn't always have to be a money thing with every single kid. And I see this from USC recruiting people, like, oh, you know, it was a money thing. They were never even close. Like, nothing. Not USC's fault. It was a money thing. Other team just paid them more money. Like, that's the name of the game sometimes. Like, some of them is about relationships like we've talked about, but other times it's just about show me the money. And if USC is going to lose all of these recruiting battles, then stop telling me how good of an NIL setup they have. Everyone keeps beating me over the head like, oh, you know, well, they're top 6. Oh, actually, they're top 8, like top 10. Like, okay, let me see it then.
Win, yeah. You got to get the wins. If you're not getting the wins, I don't care. You could have $100 million in the bank for your NIL funds, but you're not getting the kids, and you're doing something wrong.
Doesn't that bother you too, though? Like, the second a big-time player flips, oh, they never had a chance anyway. What the heck? What? This is not a team that, like, it's USC. Like, I hear so much about, oh, we're USC, we're so good. But then a big-time commit doesn't go to USC. Oh, they never had a chance. They can't compete. Like, okay, then lower your expectations dramatically if that's how you feel.
Yeah. Dylan in Albuquerque. Take a left at Albuquerque, as Bugs Bunny would say. Everyone keeps talking about needing to get bowl eligible. Well, it's non-recruiting one. In these last 3 games, is it even that important anymore given the expanded playoff and players tending to sit out anyway?
I think it's important because last year they totally turned the tide with the whole complexion of the program. People still weren't totally happy, but, like, beating Louisville, figuring out Miller Moss, like, that didn't age great, but, like, there was some good juju after that game, after a terrible season.
Yeah.
And you had 6 weeks of bowl practice to help some of those younger guys come along. Like, that to me is the importance of a bowl game. You can get a head start on next year, see what you have going forward. Like, those bowl practices are really valuable. So, like, the high profile players who probably aren't going to play, like, does a bowl game mean anything for them? No, but, like, it's good for your program to continue to practice. And maybe a young player has a big moment in a game and then, you know, something good happens. I guess USC fans would probably say, oh, I wish that Miller Moss did terrible in the bowl. Then we would have had to go with someone else. But, like, playing well should always be a good thing. And the fact that he earned the job with that game, it didn't age well, but, like, people were happy. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh, we were never going to get a quarterback, we're in trouble. Like, there were good vibes heading into the season. And right now, you need all the good vibes you can get. So I think if they do play in a bowl game, you could potentially get some of that, and that would help.
Yeah, and it doesn't count to play at a bowl game. So guys that are redshirting can play, they can get experience, special teams, whatever you want, you could do that. Swayze, how many years before high schools start paying students to play football? Middle school kids will only go to a high school that gives them a bag of money. Sad commentary on the times. I don't know. Is that like a thing? Like,
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if
recruiting
schools are already paying, but
recruiting's happening and stuff. But I don't know if there's like an NIL thing with high school players. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see. And then one last one. Thank you again for all the questions and comments and stuff in the chat. James, if Riley doesn't turn it around, will his contract be a program killer?
I hope not.
So it's a big contract. And at the time, I think made sense to hire a blue blood coach with a proven track record and all of that. But you're paying a lot of money. And if you're going to have seasons like this every other year or every year, and not seasons like the first year, which, you know, that was a good one with 11 wins. If you're going to be in the 7-5 fight for bowl eligibility and you have a top 4 paid coach or 3 or whatever Lincoln Riley is, yeah, that's going to be a problem. And then it gives the athletic department way less wiggle room. They can't do anything about it unless he wants to leave, or they have to somehow come up with, nearly $100 million. Like that's tough to get rid of your coach, especially in an era when you take some of that money and just buy a bunch of players and you can probably make them successful. So I think USC has to do everything in their power. I think they're trying to make Lincoln Riley a successful coach, because if you didn't like your coach and you could fire him, then you could do that and take it in a new direction. Jen Cohen didn't hire him. She's hired some good ones, like Kalen DeBoer, who's now the head coach at Alabama. So there's less, bullets in her chamber, right? Like there's just less things she can do when you can't get rid of the head coach. So it has to focus on trying to make sure that he's successful. I don't think it's a program killer like USC's. We've seen programs bounce back. Indiana's the all-time losingest program ever. And they won 3 games last year, and they're 10-0 right now. So, you can turn this around quickly. One hire, portal. You can turn things around pretty quick. So I don't think it's a program killer. It takes a lot more than a few bad years to kill a program like this, especially in this era. But it's limiting for sure. And there's, unfortunately for USC, you just don't have a lot of options but to try to make him the most successful coach you can be.
I've learned my lesson on trying to predict the future, but that's what you have to hope, that Riley will just figure it out. And as time goes on, I don't know, I was pretty confident that he would, and then it was okay, things still aren't going great, but he still should be able to figure this out. The offense will always be good, probably. I don't know, desperate times kind of call for desperate measures, Ryan. This decommitment today sort of really hit home for, I think, a lot of people. It's this season's going poorly, but we had that top 10 class. We got to do everything we can to lock that down. Hope. And I don't know, changes need to be made. So I hope it's not a program killer, but I'm not ruling anything out at this point with what's inspired.
You don't know. Yeah.
What a happy ending.
We'll end it even happier. El Gordo, given Riley's yearly salary, how much has each win cost this year? It's at $2.75 million. For each win.
Woo!
So that'll go down if they can win on Saturday. All right. Well, good stuff, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of weird things we had to talk about. Breaking news of a decommitment of a guy that you had talked to on Friday who reassured everyone that he was staying committed to USC, and then tells Chad Simmons that USC just didn't recruit him that hard. That's a pretty damning quote. That's going to make its rounds too, and I think that's stuff that you can't make excuses for. You just have to put in the work. And at least from what some of these players are saying, it doesn't appear, we're not there on the recruiting trail, but for whatever reason, these players are saying that USC staff is not putting in the work, and that's concerning. If it's money, that's one thing. They've raised a bunch of money. You got to put in the work.
I'm hearing now money more than maybe we've talked about. So
even money too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tough.
Yeah. So that's the other thing too, is a lot of times a player doesn't want to say it's money, but usually wouldn't make up something bad about an opposing coach too. That seems.
Well, and sometimes too, how much money you get means in a player's mind
they're trying harder
more. So
yeah, that's a good point too. Adding more money. So okay. Well, I know you were there's stuff that you should be doing while we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I've been distracted.
When breaking news like this happens, as a reporter, you got to go start reporting. And you talked to the kid, you saw him in person, just a few days ago. So it's changed quite a bit. All right, so we'll wrap it up. We'll let Connor get to his work. I got to go check in my mom and. Going to take her to sushi tonight, so this should be good. But she'll be at the game, Connor.
Okay.
She might be taking your spot at the tailgate. We'll see.
Stop saying that. Our spot. No, it could be mine. That's fine.
Well, my uncle's coming too, so I have to,
Oh, so it's both of us. How dare you?
We'll figure it out. We'll see.
No, it's fine.
Our friends at House of Victory can help us out. But yeah, if you're going to come and you're going to stop by the House of Victory tailgate, I'll be there early, and you come say hi to me and my mom. Go check it out. The Rex does a great job over there. So go check that out. For Connor Morrissette, I am Ryan Abraham. Wish we had better news. We'll see. Maybe USC can produce a victory on Saturday and bring better news for all of you. But for Connor, I'm Ryan. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.